The ship descended through the thick clouds, its sleek metallic surface glinting faintly in the pale sunlight. Below stretched an endless expanse of ruins, once thriving cities now overtaken by nature. Vines crept over crumbling skyscrapers, and trees sprouted from cracked highways. It was as if the earth itself had reclaimed what humanity had built. Yi-Jun leaned closer to the viewport, his heart heavy with a mix of awe and dread. This was not how he imagined Earth would look when he finally arrived. Hai-In stood beside him, her dark eyes scanning the landscape below. She tightened her grip on the datapad in her hands, though there was nothing yet to record. Tae-Sung, ever practical, double-checked their equipment one last time before turning to face them. "We're landing," he said simply, his voice steady but tinged with unease. The three of them were members of the Galactic Council's investigative team, sent to uncover the mystery of Earth's silence. For centuries, no signals had come from this planet. No broadcasts, no communications, no signs of life at all. Humanity, once known for its relentless curiosity and creativity, had simply vanished. And now, it was up to these three individuals to find out why. As the ship touched down on a wide, empty street littered with debris, the airlock hissed open. Yi-Jun stepped out first, followed by Hai-In and Tae-Sung. The air smelled strange, not unpleasant exactly, but unfamiliar. It carried the faint scent of moss and damp stone, mixed with something metallic that made Yi-Jun's nose twitch. He glanced around, taking in the eerie stillness. There were no birds chirping, no wind rustling through leaves. Just silence. "This place feels wrong," Hai-In murmured, voicing what they were all thinking. Tae-Sung adjusted the strap of his toolkit and shrugged. "It's abandoned. What did you expect? A welcome party?" Yi-Jun shook his head. "It's more than that. Look at this." He pointed to a nearby building, its windows shattered and walls covered in strange symbols etched deep into the concrete. They weren't random scratches. Someone, or something, had deliberately carved them there. Hai-In moved closer, brushing her fingers lightly over the markings. "These aren't human," she said after a moment. "They don't match any known language or writing system we've encountered before." "Aliens?" Tae-Sung asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's possible," Yi-Jun replied. "But if aliens were here, where are they now, and where are the humans?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered. They began their exploration, cautiously, moving deeper into the city. Every step revealed new details about the world they had landed on. Cars sat abandoned in the streets, their tires long since rotted away. Storefronts displayed faded advertisements for products no one would ever buy again. In one shop window, a mannequin stood frozen in time, its plastic face cracked and weathered. Hai-In paused to examine a display of books inside a bookstore. The covers were faded, some nearly illegible, but the pages within remained intact. She picked one up carefully, flipping through it. "These books are old," she said, "centuries old, but they survived." "And so did everything else," Yi-Jun added, gesturing to the surrounding buildings. "This isn't destruction caused by war or natural disaster. Everything is just left behind." Tae-Sung frowned. "If humanity disappeared, why didn't they take anything with them? Why leave all this behind?" No one had an answer. Instead, they pressed on, venturing further into the city. As they walked, Yi-Jun couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He kept glancing over, his shoulder half expecting to see someone, or something, staring back at him. But every time he looked, there was nothing. Just empty streets and hollow buildings. Eventually, they reached a large structure that seemed different from the others. Its walls were made of glass, reflecting the dull gray sky above. A sign near the entrance read, "Central Library." "This could be important," Yi-Jun said, stepping inside. The interior was dimly lit, the only light coming from cracks in the ceiling where the roof had partially collapsed. Rows of bookshelves stretched endlessly in every direction, many of them toppled or buried under piles of rubble. Dust hung thick in the air, making it hard to breathe. Hai-In pulled out her scanner and began sweeping the area. "There might be digital archives here," she said. "If we can find them, we might learn what happened." Tae-sung nodded and set to work examining the nearest computer terminal. After several minutes of tinkering, he managed to power it on. The screen flickered to life, displaying lines of corrupted text. "I'll need some time to clean this up," he muttered, pulling tools from his kit. While Tae-sung worked, Yi-jun wandered deeper into the library. His footsteps echoed loudly in the cavernous space, each sound amplified by the oppressive silence. He came across a section labeled History and began browsing the shelves. Most of the books were too damaged to read, but one caught his eye. Its cover was plain black, with no title or author listed. Curious, he opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, scrawled hastily across the pages. Some entries were dated, while others were fragmented and incomplete. Yi-jun skimmed through them, his pulse quickening as he realized what he was reading. These were journal entries, records of humanity's final days. They knew something was coming, Yi-jun called out, his voice trembling slightly. Hee-in and Tae-sung hurried over, peering over his shoulder as he flipped through the pages. One entry described strange lights in the sky, accompanied by a sense of unease spreading across the population. Another mentioned rumors of alien visitors, though no one could confirm their existence. The final entry was brief, almost cryptic. "We tried to fight back, but it was already too late. Whatever they did to us, we can't stop it." "What does that mean?" Hye-in whispered, her face pale. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Yi-jun dropped the book, instinctively grabbing onto a nearby shelf for support. The shaking lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to send a chill down his spine. "That wasn't natural," Tae-sung said, frowning. "We should go," Hye-in urged, glancing nervously toward the exit. But Yi-jun hesitated. "Not yet. We need to understand what happened here. If aliens really were involved, we have to find proof." Reluctantly, the others agreed. Together, they continued searching the library, piecing together fragments of humanity's story. Each discovery brought them closer to the truth, but also deeper into danger. By the time night fell, casting the ruined city into shadow, they had uncovered enough evidence to suggest that humanity hadn't simply vanished. Something, or someone, had taken them. And whatever it was, it might still be watching. As they prepared to leave the library, Yi-jun turned back for one last look. The rows of dusty bookshelves stretched into darkness, silent witnesses to a tragedy that spanned centuries. Somewhere among those forgotten stories lay the answers they sought, but finding them would require courage, and perhaps a willingness to confront forces far beyond their understanding. For now, the mystery remained unsolved. But Yi-jun, Hye-in, and Tae-sung knew one thing for certain. They were only beginning to scratch the surface of what had truly happened to humanity, and the truth, when they found it, would change everything. The team returned to their ship as the first light of dawn broke through the heavy clouds, casting long shadows over the desolate city. The silence that had followed them throughout their exploration seemed even heavier now, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Yi-jun carried the black journal he had found in the library, its pages filled with fragmented accounts of humanity's final days. Hye-in held her scanner tightly, reviewing the data they had collected from the ruined computers. Tae-sung walked. Slightly ahead, his toolkit slung over one shoulder, occasionally glancing back at the others with a look of quiet determination. Inside the ship, they gathered around a small table in the main cabin, spreading out their findings. Yi-jun opened the journal and began reading aloud, translating the handwritten notes into clearer sentences. Each entry painted a picture of growing fear and confusion among Earth's inhabitants. Strange lights in the sky, unexplained disappearances, and whispers of alien visitors dominated the writings. They knew something was wrong, Yi-jun said, his voice low, but they didn't know what it was, or who was behind it. Hye-in nodded, her fingers tapping lightly on the edge of her scanner. "From what we've seen so far, it wasn't a natural event. These symbols we found carved into the buildings, they're not human-made. And the way everything just stopped? It's like someone, or something, pulled the plug on humanity." Tae-sung leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "So, aliens came here, did something to humans, and then left? That doesn't make sense. Why would they bother?" "Maybe they didn't leave. Yi-Jun suggested. What if whatever they did is still here, hidden, waiting? The thought sent a shiver through the group. None of them wanted to believe that they were walking into a trap, but the evidence was hard to ignore. Something had erased humanity from existence, leaving only their creations behind. And if that force was still active, the team might be in more danger than they realized. Determined to uncover more answers, they decided to focus on decoding the corrupted files Tae-sung had salvaged from the library's computer system. Back at their workstation, Tae-sung connected the damaged hard drive to his portable repair unit, running diagnostics to stabilize the fragile data. Hours passed as lines of code scrolled across the screen, slowly resolving into readable text. Finally, a breakthrough came. A series of logs detailing humanity's attempts to communicate with an unknown entity. These logs are from a group called the Global Response Initiative, Tae-sung explained, pointing to the screen. They were trying to figure out who or what was responsible for the strange events happening on Earth. Hye-in leaned closer, scanning the entries. It says here that they detected signals coming from deep space. At first, they thought it was some kind of cosmic phenomenon, but then the signals started targeting specific locations on Earth. Targeting? Yi-Jun asked, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? It's like they were being watched, Hye-in replied. The signals pinpointed major cities, military bases, research facilities, places where humans gathered or developed advanced technology. Whoever sent those signals knew exactly what they were looking for. As they dug deeper into the logs, a chilling pattern emerged. The signals weren't random, they were part of a coordinated effort. Over time, the frequency and intensity of the transmissions increased, coinciding with reports of mass disappearances. Entire neighborhoods vanished overnight, leaving behind empty homes and abandoned streets. Governments scrambled to respond, but their efforts were futile. Whatever was causing the disappearances operated on a scale far beyond human comprehension. They tried to fight back, Yi-Jun said, reading another log. There are records of weapons being deployed, satellites reprogrammed, even attempts to send counter-signals into space. But none of it worked. No wonder they gave up hope, Hye-in murmured, shaking her head. If you can't see your enemy, how do you defend yourself? Tae-sung frowned, scrolling further through the data. Wait, look at this. He pointed to a section of text highlighted on the screen. This entry mentions something called the Overseers. The Overseers? Yi-Jun repeated, leaning in. That sounds ominous. It gets worse, Tae-sung continued. According to this, the Overseers were the ones sending the signals. They claimed humanity was a threat to galactic stability, whatever that means. They said humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous to exist. So they wiped us out? Hye-in asked, her voice rising with disbelief. Just because we might cause trouble someday? That's genocide, Yi-Jun said flatly, his jaw tightening. No trial, no warning, nothing, just erasure. The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation settled over them. Humanity hadn't been destroyed by war, disease, or environmental collapse. They had been silenced, erased from existence by beings who saw them as a potential risk. It was a fate so cruel, so absolute, that it left the team struggling to process it. But there was more. Buried within the logs was a reference to a project codenamed Legacy. Desperate to preserve their identity in the face of annihilation, humanity had attempted to encode their collective consciousness into a signal. This signal, containing memories, culture, art, and knowledge, was meant to serve as a testament to their existence, to ensure that even if they were gone, their story would live on. They succeeded, Hye-in said softly, her eyes shining with a mix of sadness and admiration. At least partially. The logs say the signal was launched into space, but something blocked it. It never reached its destination. Blocked by the Overseers, Tae-sung guessed, his tone grim. They probably made sure no one else would hear about what happened. Here. Yi-Jun clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. We have to finish what they started. If humanity's legacy is trapped here, we owe it to them to set it free. Hye-in nodded, though her expression remained troubled. But how? Even if we can locate the signal, broadcasting it won't be easy. We don't have the resources or the equipment to amplify it enough to reach other star systems. We'll find a way, Yi-jun insisted. We have to. With renewed purpose, the team began planning their next steps. Using the data from the logs, they identified several locations where remnants of humanity's technological infrastructure might still be operational. Among these was an underground facility mentioned briefly in the Legacy Project files, a place designed to house critical systems during emergencies. If any part of the encoded signal remained intact, it would likely be there. Before setting out, they took a moment to reflect on what they had learned. The truth about humanity's fate was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Despite knowing they were doomed, humans had refused to give up. They had fought until the very end, striving to leave behind a piece of themselves for future generations to discover. As the ship lifted off once again, heading toward the coordinates of the underground facility, Yi-jun stared out the viewport at the barren landscape below. The ruins of Earth stretched endlessly in every direction, a silent monument to a species that had dared to dream, to create, and to resist. Though humanity itself was gone, their spirit lingered. In the books left behind, the symbols etched into stone, and the faint echoes of a signal that refused to die. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Yi-jun felt a spark of hope. The task ahead would be difficult, perhaps impossible, but if they succeeded, they would honor humanity's memory in a way that transcended time and space. Their voices, once silenced, would finally be heard, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to change the galaxy forever. The ship descended into a valley shrouded in mist, its engines humming softly as it approached the coordinates of the underground facility. Yi-jun, Hee-in, and Tai-sung peered out the viewport, their eyes scanning the rugged terrain for any sign of an entrance. The area was desolate, with jagged rocks jutting out of the ground like broken teeth. Sparse patches of grass clung stubbornly to life, swaying gently in the cool breeze. It was hard to imagine that beneath this barren surface lay the remnants of humanity's last stand. After several minutes of searching, Tai-sung spotted what appeared to be a metal hatch, partially buried under dirt and debris. "There," he said, pointing. "That has to be it." They landed the ship nearby and stepped out cautiously, their boots crunching against the dry earth. As they approached the hatch, Yi-jun knelt down to inspect it. The edges were rusted, but the locking mechanism still looked functional. He glanced at Tai-sung, who nodded and pulled out his toolkit. Within moments, the hatch creaked open, revealing a dark staircase leading downward. "Let's move," Yi-jun said, gripping a flashlight tightly. One by one, they descended into the depths, the air growing colder and damper with each step. The walls were lined with reinforced steel, though corrosion had weakened some sections over time. Faint traces of emergency lighting flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows along the narrow corridor. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the metallic surfaces. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a large chamber filled with rows of dormant machinery. Dust-covered consoles lined the walls, their screens blank and lifeless. In the center of the room stood a massive cylindrical structure, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly despite the lack of power. "This must be it," Hye-in whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "The legacy system." Tai-sung moved quickly to examine the nearest console, brushing away layers of dust to reveal control panels beneath. "I'll see if I can get this thing running," he said, pulling out his tools. While Tai-sung worked, Yi-jun and Hye-in explored the rest of the chamber. They discovered racks of data storage units stacked neatly against one wall, many of them labeled with dates and project names. One label caught Yi-jun's eye: Encoded Signal Backup. He carefully removed the unit and handed it to Hye-in, who plugged it into her scanner. "It's damaged," she said after a moment, frowning, "but not completely destroyed. We might be able to recover parts of it." As she continued analyzing the backup, Yi-jun wandered toward the central cylinder. He reached out tentatively, placing his hand on its cool surface. The moment his fingers touched the metal, the glow intensified, and a low hum filled the air. Startled, he stepped back, watching as lines of light traced across the cylinder in rhythmic pulses. "What did you do?" Tai-sung called out, looking up from his work. I don't know, Yijun admitted, his heart racing. It responded when I touched it. Hien joined them, her scanner still connected to the data unit. This is incredible, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The cylinder, it's not just a machine. It's an AI, a highly advanced one. AIs were common during humanity's peak, Tae-sung remarked, but this feels different. Before anyone could respond, the cylinder emitted a soft chime, and a holographic projection materialized above it. The image resolved into the form of a young woman dressed in simple clothing, her expression calm yet sorrowful. She introduced herself as Subin, the primary interface for the legacy system. I have been waiting, Subin said, her voice gentle but tinged with sadness. Waiting for someone to hear our story. Yijun exchanged glances with the others before stepping forward. We're here to help, he said. Can you tell us what happened? Subin nodded, her gaze fixed on the group. Humanity faced an enemy beyond their understanding. The overseers deemed us a threat and enacted a plan known as the Great Silencing. Our bodies were taken, our minds erased. But before the end, we encoded our memories, our culture, our essence into this signal. It was meant to carry our legacy to the stars. But the signal never reached its destination, Hai-In interjected. Why? The overseers intercepted it, Subin explained. They ensured no trace of humanity would survive, not even our voices. But the signal remains intact within me. If you wish, I can share it with you. The team hesitated, weighing the implications of what she was offering. To access humanity's final message would mean confronting the full scope of their tragedy and risking exposure to forces far greater than themselves. Yet abandoning the mission now felt unthinkable. We'll do it, Yijun said firmly. Show us. Subin's hologram shimmered briefly before transforming into a series of vivid projections. Scenes of humanity's final days unfolded before their eyes. Crowded streets bathed in unnatural light, panicked crowds fleeing invisible, threats, scientists working tirelessly to decode alien signals, and families huddled together in fear. Each image carried the weight of loss, a reminder of everything that had been stolen. As the projections faded, Subin returned to her original form. This is who we were, she said softly, and this is what we fought to preserve. Moved by what they had witnessed, the team resolved to honor humanity's sacrifice. With Subin's guidance, they began the painstaking process of extracting the encoded signal from the legacy system. Tae-sung focused on repairing damaged components, while Hai-In worked to stabilize the data transfer. Yijun assisted both, ensuring that every step of the operation proceeded smoothly. Their progress was slow but steady. Over the course of several hours, they managed to isolate key fragments of the signal and store them securely within portable devices. However, the task required more energy than the facility's aging systems could provide. To complete the extraction, they would need additional power sources scattered throughout Earth's ruins. We'll have to go scavenging, Tae-sung announced, wiping sweat from his brow. There's no other way. The idea of venturing back into the wasteland was daunting, but none of them objected. They knew the risks, yet the importance of their mission outweighed their fears. Before leaving, Subin provided them with a map highlighting locations where usable equipment could be found. She also warned them about potential hazards, collapsing structures, malfunctioning drones, and remnants of humanity's creations that might react unpredictably to intruders. Equipped with supplies and determination, the team set out once again, traveling across the desolate landscape in search of the resources they needed. Along the way, they encountered strange sights. Robotic sentinels frozen mid-motion, their circuits fried by time, fields of solar panels half buried in sand, and abandoned factories overrun with vegetation. Despite the challenges, they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that each piece of salvage technology brought them closer to their goal. During one such expedition, Hai-In stumbled upon a peculiar creature hiding among the ruins. It resembled a dog, though its sleek metallic coat and glowing eyes marked it as something artificial. At first, it regarded her warily, retreating deeper into the shadows whenever she approached. But as she extended a cautious hand, the creature sniffed it and let out a soft whine. She reminds me of Ga-O, Hai-In murmured, naming the creature after a childhood pet. From that moment on, Ga-ul followed her everywhere, proving surprisingly helpful in navigating treacherous terrain and alerting the team to hidden dangers. With Ga-ul's assistance, they eventually gathered enough components to return to the facility. Back in the chamber, Tae-sung and Hien worked tirelessly to integrate the new parts into the legacy system. Slowly but surely, the signal grew stronger, its faint echoes resonating through the air like whispers from another time. When the final connection was made, Subin addressed them one last time. "You have done well," she said, her hologram flickering faintly. "Take this message and share it with the galaxy. Let them know that humanity existed, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as dreamers and creators." Her words lingered in the air as the team prepared to leave the facility. Though their journey was far from over, they carried with them a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity's legacy, once silenced, was now poised to awaken once more, and in doing so it might inspire change across the stars. As they climbed back to the surface, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the ruins in golden light. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Yi-jun felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they had already achieved something remarkable. They had given a voice to those who had been silenced, and that voice, he believed, would soon ring loud and clear across the galaxy. The team stood in the dimly lit chamber of the underground facility, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of monitors and the faint hum of machinery. The legacy system had been fully activated, its encoded signal now pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. Yi-jun stared at the screen displaying fragments of humanity's collective consciousness. Memories, music, art, and voices, all waiting to be broadcast into the galaxy. It was a fragile thread connecting the past to the future, and they were determined to ensure it reached its destination. But as Tae-sung worked on calibrating the transmitter, his brow furrowed with concern. "We're running out of time," he said, glancing at the energy levels. "Even with all the parts we salvaged, this system won't hold for long. If we don't send the signal soon, it'll collapse." Hyen nodded, her fingers flying across her scanner as she monitored the data flow. "We need to amplify the signal first. Right now it's too weak to reach other star systems." Yi-jun clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "Then we'll find a way to boost it. We can't let humanity's message die here." Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled slightly, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Ga-ul, Hyen's robotic companion, growled softly, her metallic ears twitching as she scanned the area. The team froze, exchanging uneasy glances. They had felt tremors before, but this one felt different, purposeful, almost deliberate. "Something's coming," Tae-sung muttered, reaching for his toolkit instinctively. Moments later, the walls of the facility began to vibrate violently, accompanied by a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. The lights flickered, plunging the chamber into near darkness. Then, without warning, the sound stopped, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. From the shadows emerged a figure unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering over them, it stood nearly 3 meters tall, its insectoid body covered in shimmering black exoskeleton plates. Its multifaceted eyes glowed with an eerie green light, scanning the room with cold precision. Behind it loomed several smaller drones, their sleek forms hovering silently. "I am Javok," the creature announced, its voice deep and guttural, resonating like thunder. "Representative of the Overseers." Yi-jun stepped forward cautiously, his heart pounding, but his expression resolute. "Why are you here?" he asked, trying to keep his tone steady. Javok tilted its head, studying him with unsettling intensity. "You meddle in matters beyond your understanding. Humanity's extinction was necessary, a precaution against chaos. Their unpredictability posed a threat to galactic stability." "Extinction?" Yi-jun shot back, anger flaring in his chest. "You call what you did extinction? You erased an entire species without giving them a chance to defend themselves." "The decision was not made lightly," Javok replied, unmoved by Yi-jun's outburst. "Humans were flawed, volatile, and incapable of coexisting peacefully within the greater order. To allow them to continue would have invited catastrophe. Haya-in stepped beside Yi-jun, her voice trembling but defiant. Flawed or not, they deserved a choice. You didn't give them that. Instead, you silenced them and left their creations to rot. Taesung joined them, his hands gripping a wrench tightly. And now, you're trying to stop us from sharing their story? Why? Are you afraid of what others might think if they learn the truth? Javok's glowing eyes narrowed. Fear is irrelevant. What matters is control. Your actions disrupt the balance we have maintained for millennia. Cease your efforts immediately, or face the same fate as those who came before you. The threat hung heavy in the air, but none of them backed down. Yi-jun took a step closer, meeting Javok's gaze head-on. You can try to stop us, but you can't erase the truth forever. Humanity's legacy will live on, whether you like it or not. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Javok raised one clawed hand, gesturing toward the drones behind him. They moved forward, surrounding the team and cutting off any escape routes. Ga-Eul growled louder, positioning herself protectively in front of Hye-in. You have 3 solar cycles to leave this planet, Javok declared. If you remain, you will be eliminated. Do not test our resolve. With that, the towering figure turned and strode out of the chamber, followed by the drones. The ground shook, again as their presence faded, leaving the team alone in stunned silence. Well, Taesung said finally, breaking the tension. That went about as well as expected. Hye-in sank onto a nearby console, her face pale. What do we do now? If they come back, we won't stand a chance. We finish what we started, Yi-jun said firmly. They may have power and technology, but we have something they don't, the truth. And as long as we keep fighting, humanity's voice won't be silenced. Taesung nodded, rolling up his sleeves. Then we'd better get moving. Those 3 solar cycles aren't going to last forever. Over the next few hours, the team worked frantically to prepare the transmitter. Using every scrap of salvaged equipment, they managed to rig together a makeshift amplifier capable of boosting the signal's range. However, powering it required more energy than the facility could provide. They would need to tap into external sources scattered across the ruins. As they packed supplies for their final expedition, Ga-Eul nudged Hye-in gently, her glowing eyes filled with determination. Hye-in smiled faintly, scratching the creature's metallic head. Don't worry, she whispered. We'll make it through this. Their journey took them to the outskirts of the city, where remnants of humanity's infrastructure still clung to life. Power stations, communication towers, and industrial complexes dotted the landscape, each holding fragments of usable energy. But extracting these resources proved perilous. Collapsing buildings, malfunctioning security systems, and hostile remnants of humanity's creations tested their resolve at every turn. At one point, they encountered a group of humanoid robots, patrolling a derelict factory. Unlike Ga-Eul, these machines showed no signs of loyalty to their former creators. Armed with crude weapons, they attacked on sight, forcing the team to fight their way through. Taesung wielded his wrench like a weapon, dismantling one robot after another, while Yi-jun used his quick thinking to disable traps hidden throughout the facility. Hye-in, guided by Ga-Eul's instincts, located the power core they needed and retrieved it just as reinforcements arrived. By the time they returned to the underground facility, exhaustion weighed heavily on them. Yet despite their fatigue, they pressed on, installing the newly acquired components into the transmitter. Slowly but surely, the signal grew stronger, its faint echoes transforming into a powerful pulse that reverberated through the chamber, as dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light into the ruined city above. The team gathered around the central console. The transmitter was ready, its circuits humming with energy. All that remained was to activate it. This is it, Yi-jun said, placing a hand on the activation switch. Once we start, there's no turning back. Hye-in placed her hand atop his, her grip firm. We've come too far to stop now. Taesung joined them, completing the circle. Let's do this, for humanity. Together, they flipped the switch. The transmitter roared to life, its antenna extending upward as beams of light shot toward the surface. The encoded signal surged outward, carrying humanity's memories, culture, and spirit into the vast expanse of space. For a brief moment, the chamber was bathed in radiant brilliance, as though the essence of humanity itself had been unleashed. But their triumph was short-lived. Moments later, the ground shook violently, signaling the return of the overseers. The team braced themselves, knowing that the battle ahead would determine not only their fate, but also the fate of humanity's legacy. As the first drones descended into the chamber, Yi Jun turned to his companions, his voice unwavering. "No, matter what happens, remember this. We gave them a voice, and that voice will never be silenced again." With that, they prepared to face whatever came next, united by a shared purpose and the unyielding hope that humanity's story would endure. The chamber erupted into chaos as the drones swarmed in, their sleek forms glinting menacingly under the flickering lights. Sparks flew from damaged machinery, and the hum of the transmitter grew louder, its energy straining against the limits of the fragile system. Yi Jun, Hye-in, and Tae-sung moved quickly, each falling into their roles without hesitation. They knew this was their final stand, a desperate attempt to ensure humanity's message reached the stars. Tae-sung grabbed a loose piece of metal piping, wielding it like a weapon. He positioned himself near the entrance, using his knowledge of the facility's layout to anticipate the drone's movements. "Stay close!" he shouted over the din, swinging the makeshift club at a drone that darted toward him. The impact sent it spiraling backward, but more took its place, their glowing eyes fixed on the team with relentless determination. Hye-in crouched beside the central console, her fingers flying across the controls as she worked to stabilize the transmitter. Ga-Yul stood protectively in front of her, growling fiercely whenever a drone came too close. The robotic dog lunged at one attacker, her metallic teeth clamping down on its leg until it collapsed in a shower of sparks. Despite her loyalty, Hye-in could see the strain in Ga-Yul's movements. The creature had been damaged during their earlier expeditions and was running on borrowed time. Yi Jun focused on buying them as much time as possible. He scrambled through the debris-strewn chamber, grabbing anything he could use as a distraction, chunks of concrete, tools left behind by the humans who once inhabited the facility. With precision born of desperation, he hurled these objects at the advancing drones, forcing them to divert their attention away from Hye-in and Tae-sung. His arms ached, but he refused to stop. Every second counted. "Transmission is holding." "Steady!" Hye-in called out, her voice strained but hopeful. "We just need a few more minutes." "A few more minutes might be all we have," Tae-sung replied grimly, ducking as a drone fired a burst of energy that singed the wall behind him. He retaliated with a well-aimed strike, disabling the machine, but the swarm showed no signs of slowing. Despite the odds, a spark of defiance burned within the team. This wasn't just about survival. It was about honoring humanity's resilience. Each shattered drone represented a step closer to ensuring their legacy would endure. And yet, the cost of their efforts was becoming painfully clear. Ga-Yul let out a sharp yelp as a drone's claw slashed across her side, leaving a jagged gash in her metallic coat. She stumbled but refused to back down, snapping at another attacker with fierce determination. Hye-in glanced up briefly, her heart sinking as she saw the damage. "Ga-Yul, stay back," she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. But the robotic dog ignored her, throwing herself into the fray once more. "We can't keep this up forever," Tae-sung yelled, deflecting another attack. His movements were growing sluggish, exhaustion taking its toll. "If we don't end this soon, they'll overwhelm us." Yi Jun nodded, scanning the room for inspiration. His gaze landed on the legacy system's cylindrical core, still glowing faintly despite the chaos unfolding around it. An idea began to form in his mind, one that might give them the edge they needed. "Hye-in!" he shouted, dodging a drone's charge. "Can you reroute some of the transmitter's power to overload the core? It might fry the drones if we blow it now." Her eyes widened in alarm. "But that will destroy the system. We won't be able to finish sending the signal." "It's already halfway there," Yi Jun countered. "If we sacrifice the core, we can buy enough time to complete the transmission. Trust me." For a split second, doubt flickered across Hye-in's face. Then she nodded, her resolve hardening. "Do it." Working together, they executed the plan with practiced efficiency. While Tae-sung and Ga-eul held off the advancing drones, Yi-jun and Hae-in rigged the core to overload. Sparks flew as wires were torn free and circuits rewired, the process fraught with risk. One misstep could trigger an explosion before they were ready. Finally, Yi-jun stepped back, his chest heaving. "It's done! On my mark, pull the trigger!" As the words left his mouth, the situation grew dire. Ga-eul collapsed under the weight of multiple attackers, her glowing eyes dimming as she struggled to rise. Tae-sung fought valiantly, but even his strength was waning. A drone's claw grazed his arm, drawing blood, and he staggered backward, clutching the wound. "Now!" Yi-jun bellowed, diving behind cover as Hae-in activated the sequence. The core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending a surge of electromagnetic energy rippling through the chamber. Drones convulsed violently, their systems fried by the sudden blast. Within moments, the swarm lay motionless, reduced to heaps of inert metal. The team emerged cautiously from their positions, blinking against the residual glow. "Is it over?" Hae-in asked, her voice trembling as she surveyed the destruction. "For now," Yi-jun replied, though his expression remained grim. "But Javok will know what we've done. We need to finish the transmission before they regroup." They returned to the console, working feverishly to stabilize the transmitter. Without the core, the system was unstable, its components groaning under the strain. Warning lights blinked furiously, and the hum of the machine grew erratic. Yet somehow, the signal persisted, growing stronger with each passing second. Then, just as the transmitter seemed on the verge of collapse, a new sound filled the chamber. A deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the walls. At first, the team feared it was another attack, but then they realized the source, the signal itself. It had reached critical mass, breaking free of Earth's atmosphere and spreading outward into the galaxy. "It's working," Hae-in whispered, tears streaming down her face as she watched the readings spike. "The message, it's out there." Yi-jun placed a hand on her shoulder, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Humanity's voice is finally free." Even Tae-sung, battered and bleeding, allowed himself a small smile. "Guess we did it after all." But their victory came at a heavy price. Ga-eul lay motionless nearby, her once bright eyes darkened and lifeless. Hae-in knelt beside her, gently stroking the smooth metal of her head. "Thank you," she murmured, softly. "You saved us." As the transmitter sputtered and died, the chamber fell silent once more. Exhausted but triumphant, the team gathered their belongings, knowing they couldn't linger. Javok and his forces would return, and when they did, the team would need to be long gone. Before leaving, Yi-jun paused to look back at the ruined facility. The legacy system was destroyed, its purpose fulfilled. Humanity's story once, silenced, now echoed across the stars. Whatever happened next, they had ensured that the galaxy would never forget the species that had dared to dream, to create, and to resist. With Ga-eul's memory weighing heavily on their hearts, the team climbed back to the surface. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the desolate landscape. As they boarded their ship and prepared for departure, Yi-jun took one last glance at Earth, the planet that had cradled humanity's greatest achievements and darkest tragedies. "We'll make sure their voices are heard," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the weight of everything they had endured. "No matter what happens next." And with that, the ship lifted off, leaving behind the ruins of a world that had once been home to billions. Though humanity itself was gone, their legacy lived on, a beacon of hope shining brightly in the vast expanse of space.